Hi everyone. I have a slightly different video than usual. If you're on my channel a lot, generally I'm covering things like Flutter, sometimes some backend development, a bit of both. But I do the odd DevOps kind of thing, especially when I find a problem that takes me a long time to figure out, be it there's no really good documentation about it, or the docs are really complicated and confusing, and I can't find a good video. So this is a situation on and off I've been working on for probably the past month. Is I have a very large S3 bucket. If we look at the metrics here, you actually see there's 16.6 terabytes of data in here. This is for essentially a startup I'm working on that I was incubating within my like main AWS account. And now that it's making revenue, we wanted to set up our own account for it to kind of keep, costs and everything like really isolated. But getting all this data over was not the easiest thing in the world. Tried a few things, like I knew I couldn't just like, download it all and upload it, because that's a lot of data and there's going to be costs with that and all that kind of things. I've tried it through the CLI, and there is a way to do it through the CLI with using, or even using like Boto if you're in the Python world. Problem with that is it's complicated, it's still really slow, and when your auth token expires, everything just stops working. So I did know about this other option where you can use something called batch operations, but it's really, especially between two different AWS accounts, it's really complicated to set up. But I'm going to simplify it for you, and I'm going to show you how to do this. And I hope this is helpful for you. And I wish that this video existed before, so I would have not pulled my hair out so much. So we're going to do this. So what I'm doing on my left-hand side here, this side, because of the way my camera is, this is going to be where the source is. So this is my the Young Astronauts AWS account. And then I have another one over here. So I'm logged in. This is obviously an incognito one, so I can be logged into both. And I'll walk you through the process. No code here, just configuration. So let's figure this out. So I'm going to go on my source and find the bucket. So I'm in S3 land. You can obviously get there by going S3 and then going to your buckets. And the one I am going to do for this tutorial is one called Surf Music. It doesn't matter what this is. In fact, this bucket's very small. And if I was really trying to do it for this bucket, I would probably just download it and upload it. It's even easier, but this is just good to show how to do it. And it will work with, like I said, I did one with 16 terabytes. And it actually took 4 hours to copy everything over, which is kind of cool for that much data. Now, a lot more time to figure out how to do it, but anyways, here we are. Okay, so I have this bucket here, which is cool. And what I'm going to do on the destination, we'll call it, is go to S3 as well. And I'm going to create a new bucket here. Now, we have to make the bucket can't be the same name, because actually bucket names on AWS are unique. So I'm going to call this, maybe I'm just going to try doing Surf Music without the dash and see if that will work. So far, so good. And a few things we want to do. We're going to enable ACLs. This is not necessarily required, depending on what your bucket permissions are, but I want it to be able to use ACLs for this. And then make the object writer. And again, similarly, you don't necessarily have to do this, but for this, I want to have public access to it. So I'm going to enable that. And the important thing here, this is something you do have to do. You need bucket versioning enabled. Everything else is good for me. Let's go and try and create the bucket. And it looks like that name worked. So now we have one right here. Now on my source, the one thing I have to do is make sure that versioning is enabled. So I'll go to here and go to Edit. And I go enable. That's all I got to do on that side for now. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we need to add a bucket policy to the destination. So we're going to go to our new bucket that we just made. We're going to go to, I believe, permissions, bucket policy. And we're going to put this bucket policy in. Now, there'll be a link in the description for all these little snippets. But basically, what we need to do is take our, this permission right here is going to essentially allow the other account to talk to this one and essentially write files to it. So what I need is under my source account, I need to grab the account ID here. And I'm going to paste it in where it says source account ID. Then for destination bucket name, it's just the name of this bucket. So we'll just do, I think it was just called surf music, like that. So it's this, this exact same thing right here. So this is telling it, okay, these are the things you can allow, things like replicating the object, deleting it, all these sorts of things here, tagging, ACL. This is important because otherwise it can't change it to being like a public file or a private file or whatever. So after lots of debugging, these are the ones I found I needed at the minimal. If you run into certain errors because you have a more complicated setup than me, you might just have to do a little bit of Googling to figure out what else, but this should work. I've done this exact same thing on a couple projects now. All right, so we'll just save changes there. Now, back on the source side, we need to create a role because we don't want to just use root to do this. So we're going to search for IAM, which is how we manage all of our roles and stuff like that. And before creating the role, we're going to create a policy. So I'm going to create a policy, and I'm going to call this, we'll just go into the JSON-based one. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. And for this policy, I'm going to paste all of this in here. Now, one other step that we actually should have done before this, although I've already done it, and that's probably why I skipped it, but you'll want to also create a bucket on the source account for logging, because when this process goes through, it's actually going to log a manifest there, as well as progress details and all that kind of stuff. So you'll want to make sure, and I'll show you the one I have. I just called it TYA logging, and I've just created a bucket. It's just called TYA logging. For properties, there's nothing special you have to do here. For permissions, there's nothing special you have to do here. It's really just like a basic bucket because this role that we're going to create will have the permissions to put stuff here. So let me walk you through that. So there's a few different statements here. One, this is essentially saying this role has access to the source bucket. So we need to put the source bucket here, which is surf-music. And we want to also have a secondary one that's saying, so it has access to the bucket itself right at its root, and then anything deeper inside of it. It's quite possible you don't need this first line, but I did a lot of debugging, and this is one thing that I did, and it ended up working. And then what we want to do is also allow the destination bucket certain permissions. So we need to now change this to, again, it's different because this is the name of this destination bucket. So we'll do that. And what we're saying is we allow it to replicate the object, delete stuff, put the object, update the ACL, all that kind of stuff. Pretty similar to the bucket policy on the destination. Right here, oh, I think I mistyped something. There we go. Then this is just something for dealing with the actual job, because we're going to be creating what's called a replication job. And we need to essentially say, okay, this role itself has permissions to create a job, describe a job, list all the jobs so it, can understand some of the jobs, and also deal with inventory configuration, which is part of this process. Then lastly, on that logging bucket that I just showed you that you can very easily create, we want to make sure we can get object version, and put object. So this will allow it to read from that bucket and put stuff in that bucket. Okay, so we're going to click next now on the policy. We're going to give this a meaningful policy name. So I'm going to call this surf admin migration. The reason I'm just having admin is because this is the S3 that has all the admin CSS and images and stuff like that. And we can put a description if we want, but the name's enough for me. So okay, so we've created a policy now. The next thing we want to do is actually create a role that's going to use that policy. So we're going to go to roles, and we're going to go create role, and we're going to choose a custom trust policy. And now for our custom trust policy, all we need in here, again, these will be linked in the description. We are saying we want to allow working with s3.amazon.aws.com, as well as the batch operations domain, and action assume role. That's all we need there. And then we click next. And then we need to add a permission. So here we're going to search for that permission that we created, surf admin migration, and click next. And we'll give this surf admin role, just so we know if we're looking at stuff, it's a role. So a role is, very much like almost like a user, like it's a person or whatever, an entity that has certain permissions, and we've given it through that policy, and we should be good there. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to go to our S3 bucket again. So let's just go here because we're done in this area, and we'll search for S3. And we're going to go to the bucket that we want to duplicate. So it's called surf-music. Yep. And we want to go to management. And here we want to create a replication rule. And this is kind of cool because what this will do is it will replicate all the data, but while we have the rule set up and running, even if new things get into this bucket, it'll also continue and replicate over. So we're going to do like a one-off job to get everything, but that's going to continuously replicate until we need it, which in my case right now isn't really necessary, but it was actually working really perfect for that 14 terabyte or 16 terabyte transfer because that 4.5 hours, more data was getting pumped into there. So it kind of just was always still flowing and moving, and I didn't have to worry about any downtime during my server migration. So create replication rule. We're going to call this surf admin replication. Sure. Status enabled. And right here, we're going to just do apply to all objects in the bucket. You do have the option to say, hey, I only care about anything in, folder foo, bar, star or whatever, but we want the whole bucket. And for destination, very important, we want to specify a bucket in another account. And here we have to grab our account ID from the destination and paste it in here. And then it's just surf music, one word. One thing to note, it's ideal if both buckets are in the same region. It will be a lot quicker, but it will still work in different regions. And what we want to also do is change object owner to destination bucket owner, because essentially what will happen, these will get copied over. If we don't have this checked, this account will still be the owner of those files, and we don't want that. We want the new account to own the files. And then for roles, now we have to look for that role that we made. So I'm going to search for surf admin role. And encryption we don't care about, or at least I don't care about. You can care about it if you want, and none of these matter to me either. We'll click save. And what we want to do is, yes, let's do this one-off job to actually go and do it. And yeah, let's just go make sure everything's good. Now here's where we might want to, generate a completion report. So here I'm going to go browse S3. I'm going to search for that TYA logging bucket that I told you about. And that way we can get all of the data in there, that logging and when errors happen and stuff, it's kind of the only place you're going to see them, because all this stuff is going to happen in the background through AWS. It's not going to happen in the browser, obviously, and you're not going to see live stuff. You kind of have to wait for the logs to show up. And then for permissions, we're just going to choose that same role again, because we gave that role the permission to actually write to that. So surf admin role. We're going to click save. And we're going to see we have a new job here. Now we can refresh a few times and you'll see preparing. If this is a very large bucket, like that 16 terabyte one, the preparing might take 10, 20, 30 minutes. Otherwise it might be, pretty quick. So we'll just let that go right now. Okay, refreshed a few times and we have, it went to the ready state, then it went to an active state, meaning it's actually in progress. Now it says there's only 2 objects. Is that actually true? Let me see. Buckets. This was called. It's definitely possible there's not that many objects, but I feel like, okay, there's this. Oh yeah, there is actually only 2 objects in those. I picked a really funny test, but I do have to move this over. I'm not just doing this for tutorial purposes. Okay, so it's active and we see this. It says 0% complete. What you'll see at this point is as you refresh, eventually you'll see the completion rate go up. And ideally, your failed rate will not go up. If the failed rate's going up, you kind of have to just wait around and basically be like, okay, something went wrong. And that's when you would go to essentially your logging bucket. So let's just look for that. And I'll try and find one, hopefully, that has some logs. This one did not, because I think it failed before it got to that point. Let me just find an example. Here we go. So you'll see this after a fail or even after a success. And you can kind of ignore the manifest, look at it if you want, but in results, you'll actually see a CSV file that you can go and you can click the download button here and view it. And it'll actually tell you what went wrong. It'll give you some kind of error message, at least enough to Google and figure out what permission you might be missing. So let's go through this. And it says completing. So that's good. We have complete 100%, total fail rate 0. If we go over to here now, go to our objects and refresh, we'll see they've been moved over successfully. So that was a pretty quick one because there was literally just two files with a folder in between, and everything's good. This will eventually go to the completed state. I think right now, yeah, there it is, completed. I'm assuming completing is it writing those files that I was just showing you, and completed is it's done. Now, say you didn't set it up with a replication role and you just went into here. You can, of course, just create a job and do a one-off thing through here just by doing create job and kind of following the same process. And say you did that, and you're like, oh no, I missed some data because it took 2 hours and partway into there. A fun tip you can do is you can duplicate this. So you can go clone job. And the one thing you'll definitely want to change is choose replication status and choose none. And if you do this and go through just click next, next, finish, it'll create a new job and it will only be adding the things that have never been replicated. That might not be necessary depending on your use case, but it is something you can do. And that's about it. That's all I wanted to show. This is something, honestly, like it took me so much. I pulled my hair out like a million times. My hair used to be long before figuring this out. Now it's really short. And yeah, just wanted to share and everything. So yeah, please, if you like this video, like it, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you again. Thanks.